Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. It's the Friday of Easter weekend, and I know we've all been in our houses for weeks now, and those of us who are going out to do work for essential jobs, we appreciate you so much. And I know that this is going to be a difficult weekend for a lot of people who want to gather with their friends and family to celebrate Easter. And I encourage everyone to continue to follow the stay-at-home order that is issued in Austin to stay home, stay safe, stop the spread of the virus, and if you do have to go out to buy groceries, that you wear your masks. Today's live video is about people who are stuck at home in abusive situations. We've been receiving an uptick of calls at our office from people who are stuck at home in abusive situations, and so we wanted to do a video to help you know what benefits are out there or what protections are out there for immigrant victims of violence and abuse. The first thing is that if anyone watching this video finds themselves in a dangerous situation, that you need to get yourself into safety. If you are actively being threatened with violence, you need to call the police. I know that sometimes immigrants have a fear of having any contact with the police, understandably. What I can tell you is that in Austin, definitely with the Austin Police Department, they will not ask an immigrant victim of a crime what their immigration status is. The only time they'll ask for an immigration status is if it's relevant to the investigation, like if it's a human trafficking investigation. So I definitely encourage anyone who's suffering violence or threats of violence that you call the police, and that can actually be helpful for an immigration case in the future, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But call the police, and then if you need to get out of the home, there are various shelters around the Austin area. We're going to put a link to the shelter. Safe Place is the biggest shelter in the Austin area, and they are on a wait list right now, but there are lists of some other shelters, and I know it's a challenge right now with the shutdown and coronavirus, but there are places where you can go, and we'll put those resources for you in the comments. If you have any questions and you want to talk to us in private, feel free to send us a message on Facebook, text our office. Our main number is 512-599-8500. We are open. We are working on immigration cases, and immigration is still processing your cases even though they're not offering in-person interviews right now. There's also a national domestic violence hotline that you all could call if you need to talk to someone about resources that are available. And so we'll also put that number in the comments to call. I tried calling today actually just to find what resources they might provide to someone calling with an immigrant domestic violence situation. But the wait time was 15 minutes. And so I didn't wait. I didn't want to take up that time to speak with someone when there might be someone in danger actually trying to call. So, but that, that is the main place to go for resources about shelters and who you can call and what you can do to be safe and have a safety plan. So let's get to what immigration options are available to victims of violence. The first one I want to start with is VAWA, which stands for the Violence Against Women Act. And essentially, the idea of VAWA is that it allows victims of violence whose abusive parent, child, or spouse is threatening, to get them deported or is not helping with their immigration case. It allows the immigrant victim of violence to apply for their own green card without the assistance of their spouse. The most common scenario is an immigrant victim of abuse with a U.S. citizen spouse, but it's also available to parents of U.S. citizen kids who are older than 21, and that happens. Sometimes parents are living with their kids in the home or their kids are staying with them right now, and there are challenging situations happening, and so this could qualify a parent whose U.S. citizen child is over 21. It also applies to kids whose parents are abusive. So it's spouses, parents, and children, and in VAWA, the abuser has to have U.S. citizenship or permanent residence. You do not need a police report. You do not need medical records to prove your case. What you do have to show with a VAWA case is that this was, in the case of a marriage, that it was a good faith marriage. It is a good faith marriage, meaning it's real. It wasn't just for immigration purposes. and that you have to show that you've suffered extreme cruelty in the relationship, which doesn't necessarily mean physical violence. Obviously, it includes physical violence, but it can be emotional, verbal, financial, sexual abuse. And so I challenge people to think about whether, if you're in an abusive or a controlling relationship and you tell yourself, well, I'm not suffering from violence, but your partner, your spouse, controls where you go and who you talk to and exhibits very jealous behavior and controls how you spend money. These are all things that can qualify for VAWA, and we've won lots of VAWA cases without actual physical violence in the relationship. So think of it as cruelty, not just violence. And the great thing about VAWA is that you don't need to have filed a police report. And the other thing that's really great about VAWA is it contains a confidentiality provision. It's Section 8 USC 1367. And what this protection does is it says that immigration is prohibited from talking to your abuser about your case. So they can't accept information from your abuser, nor can they tell your abuser that you filed for VAWA. So in almost every case like this that I've worked on, I hear the story that the abuser threatens to call ICE or get their victim deported, or refuses to apply for their immigration status. And so a common question for us is, well, how are they going to find out? Is this going to hurt them? What if they call immigration on me? And so VAWA has this really strong protection for immigrant victims that says that your abuser cannot call and report you, nor can they get any information about your case. So it's something really important to keep in mind about VAWA. If you're in a home and you're thinking about you might want to apply for VAWA, and you're going to leave the house, and what should you gather? So I wanted to go over some of the documentation that we're going to need for a VAWA case. So these are things that you guys can be thinking about collecting. We obviously need all your civil documents, like the birth certificates of the applicant, the birth certificates of your children, which is also good faith marriage evidence. It's nice to have proof of the legal status of your abuser, like their green card or their birth certificate, but it's not required. So if you don't have it, it's okay. We can still get around it. Any evidence that you have of good faith marriage, like a shared lease contract, shared bank accounts, shared insurance, anything like that. And then we do want evidence of the cruelty if there is any. So if you were hit and you had a bruise, or if your partner threw the dishes everywhere or made a big mess, you should take pictures of this stuff. Because this can be evidence. Or if they're sending you text messages or emails threatening you, saying mean things to you, take screenshots of this stuff, save this stuff, because that can all be evidence. So that's what I would recommend on a VAWA case. And obviously just contact us. We'll walk you through it. We're not charging for consultations right now. We really want to be here to help you guys get through what you're going through. And so give us a call, shoot us a message, and we're here for you. But again, if you're in a dangerous situation in this moment, let's start by calling the domestic violence hotline or calling a shelter and getting yourself into safety, and then we can focus on your immigration case. For those of you who are thinking, well, that's great, but my abuser is not a U.S. citizen or not a permanent resident, there's still an option for you. It's called the U visa. The U visa is a visa for victims of crime in the United States who assist law enforcement with the investigation of the crime. So one big difference in the U visa is that you do need to have filed a police report and help the police with their investigation. There doesn't have to be an arrest, there doesn't have to be a conviction, but you do have to have filed a police report and at least provided some information to the police. And your abuser in this case can be anyone, but it also can be someone who's undocumented, which is a critical difference between VAWA and the U visa. The first step in the U visa is always to get a certification from law enforcement that you have been the victim of a crime and that you've been helpful in the investigation of the crime. Without a certification from law enforcement, we can't go forward, but oftentimes we do get those certifications. So definitely worth trying. And this again is a reason why I encourage people to call the police if you suffer violence, not just so that you can stay safe, but also because it then opens up this avenue for the U visa as an option. With the U visa, you don't have to prove good faith marriage, you don't have to prove extreme cruelty, but you do have to show that you've been helpful, you've cooperated, and that you've suffered harm as a result of the crime of which you were a victim. So that can be physical harm, it can be mental harm, and typically we'll do like a psychological evaluation or a letter from your counselor. But there's not a whole lot of evidence for a U visa that you need to gather before you leave the house. So just to recap all of this, if you're in an abusive or controlling or dangerous situation and you're in your house right now, priority number one is to get yourself into safety. Call the domestic violence hotline, get yourself into a shelter, get out of your dangerous situation. Priority number two is to think about how we can get you guys some status in the United States. VAWA is for victims of cruelty perpetrated by their spouse or their parent or their child, who has to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. Does not require a police report, does not require really any particular evidence. The U visa is for victims of crime who assist law enforcement. It is an option available to people who have been abused by an undocumented partner, and you do have to file a police report. So feel free to share this video. I hope everyone's staying safe. Let us know if there's any way we can help you. Again, our number is 512, or maybe I didn't say it before, it's 512-599-8500. We're here for you. Stay safe, and happy Easter, everyone.